Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to introduce you today to someone who was an ordinary person in an extraordinary situation. He was a top sales producer in every company he worked for, and on January 15th, 2009, he was on a business trip he had made 100 times before. Like all of us when we travel, especially on business, things are often routine, and we take things for granted. Then out of the blue, something happens that changes what was once routine to a day that changes your life. When US Airways Flight 1549, or the Miracle on the Hudson, ditched into the Hudson River on January 15th, 2009, Dave Sanderson not only survived the crash, but also started to realize that the moments that made up his life prepared him for what was about to happen. After the incident, the lessons and strategies that he learned throughout his life were instrumental that day and the days following. He started to realize that one can actually grow from traumatic life experiences and set out on a path to not only share the lessons from that day, but practical and implementable strategies anyone can use to not only survive their moment, but grow and thrive. Dave reveals the inner strength it took to make it through the day and how you can grow from challenges throughout your personal and business life, and how being resilient using your personal leadership skills and employing state management can help you not only overcome any obstacle, but grow and thrive. How all the moments in your life matter. I'd like to introduce you to, and please welcome, Dave Sanderson.
Tammy, thank you for having me today.
Really happy to have you here. As you know, this is a podcast all about transitions, and clearly your experience on January 15th, 2009. But take us back even before that time.
Well, thanks for asking. I've had many transitions in my life from, going out of college, being in restaurant management was something I never knew anything about, but my dad told me I had to get a job, so I had to get a job, which was restaurant management, which was a great experience. But then I transitioned out of that into sales. And that was about 1986, 1987, when I got engaged, and my wife wanted me to be with her here in Charlotte, and I was up in Northern Virginia, which wasn't a real good plan for somebody who's getting married. So I transitioned to sales, and therefore I was actually working door-to-door sales, selling copiers. It was a huge transition from being in a restaurant to selling copiers. But it was a great experience because I had to learn how to not only speak and present to people, but also manage rejection, which is something that a lot of us don't have the opportunity to learn, especially through college and our career. But it was a great experience. But I transitioned, in different kind of sales at that point, from copier sales to, known as data processing back in MIS, to outsourcing to software to consulting. So I transitioned a lot within sales, but as a part of that, I also transitioned my mindset and became not only a part of the team, but also the head of security for a guy by the name of Tony Robbins. Gave me the opportunity to transition at a level that I never thought that I'd be able to transition, because it taught me that, I had to be around great people to really understand the mindset of those folks, how to communicate at that level. And that being able to focus on my own personal development transitioned me in a lot of different ways, at a different level than I thought it would be. But then we work our way up to 2009 when I was involved with the plane crash. And that was a transition on a number of different levels. Number one, transition, of course, in physically what happened to me that day.
Yeah.
Emotionally what happened to me that day. Spiritually what happened, and just a different worldview, which I think that's a big one of the biggest transitions I ever had, was the transition in worldview, which then led to leaving that job where I was doing very well as a top producer to starting my own company. So I would say, Tammy, there's been a number of transitions, but everybody's got a lot of transitions in life.
Well, they do, but it sounds like each transition that you made from the restaurant business to copier sales to then other kinds of sales, that it sounds like there was a mindset shift. There were other people involved in those decisions, that you had some clear intentions as you made each transition. And I'm curious if you learned something as you moved from one transition to another, or what were the kinds of things that you were thinking along the way, and that post-plane crash, how you went about making decisions differently. Because I'm guessing that when you've gone through that kind of, major traumatic life event, you're not going to go about making life decisions in the same way. And I'm curious to know, when you, in those earlier years, for example, going from, the restaurant business into sales, whether you really felt like you were even making a life decision at that point, or whether you were just thinking, hey, I'm just changing industries.
Great distinction, great question, because going back then, this is 1986, 1987, one of the things I did back then, which initially it wasn't intentional at all, it just came to me. All of a sudden I started realizing what I had the opportunity for, is I found my first mentor, who was always coming to my restaurant. And he was known as the Sam Walton of Charlotte, Tammy. And basically what I mean by that is, when I first met Bill, he wore a flannel shirt and drove a pickup truck. So you have a preconceived idea.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you find out this gentleman owns 80 movie theaters, is a multimillionaire.
Oh, wow.
Under his wing, and he starts teaching you these life lessons. And it was a great experience for me, because I didn't know even what a mentor was, but he started giving me these life lessons. So to answer your first question, it was very intentional, because when he was a businessman trying to teach, he taught me these 12 principles he learned back in 1929 that he passed on to me.
Wow.
So when I changed from restaurants to sales, I knew that was going to be intentional, because he said, you're not going to be able to make any money, you're not going to be able to be successful unless you start controlling your own destiny. And sales was my first pathway to do that, because I could control the sale.
I see.
So that's a very good distinction that you just picked up on, because that was intentional.
Yeah.
Now, some of the other moves through that were more intentional, but they're semi-intentional, because I wanted to improve on the technology. Like, I'm in copier sales. That's great. I was a good.
Yeah.
But now that everything's moving to data processing.
Right.
And then all of a sudden now things are moving to big software. Right.
Right.
So those were intentional because of the technology and what I learned.
You were following the trends then. You were staying alert to what was going on in the market. So you had this wonderful person who came in looking like a character. You had no idea who he was. He was giving you these lessons. You clearly had developed a rapport with him. But it sounds like you were also having some very almost values-based kinds of conversations with him early on about, what does it mean to be successful, and how do you start to go after success? I'm curious, in your mind, back then when you were a younger person, what it meant to be successful. Was it just about making money, or were there other things that you were aiming for then? And how has that formed or shaped who you are today?
Good question. Initially, it was about the money. When you're making $13,600 a year, right? It's about the money, right? Because you're getting married and all this stuff. So, very intentional. Yes, it was about the money. But once I got in sales, and he was sort of giving me the mindset of a business person, having the things I had to think about, the bigger picture, things, spiritually. It was amazing, just those little distinctions we were making, because pretty much everything that he was teaching me went back to a lesson in the Bible someplace. And I think it always starts there. But he was giving me these distinctions. So yes, I was delving deeper and deeper into questions about, what does it really mean to have awareness, or, what do you mean by, persistence? I mean, yes, you have 80 movie theaters, but he said the first 10 years, you got to remember when I began, it's turned into depression.
Oh, that's
and
right.
No one had any money. And he said, I was hooked. And this was a great lesson for me, because this talk told me about the question about persistence. So he said, people had no money, people didn't have a job, but I was into the movies. That's when the movies became the big thing, right?
Yeah.
He had he wanted to be a movie theater, but no one had money to go to the movies.
Right.
We had to figure out a strategy to do that. He said what he worked with his mentor on is he would get people to come to the movies for free because they needed entertainment. They needed something to break away from the negativity.
Right.
But they would buy popcorn.
Aha.
And he said, so he started figuring, he said, but if I didn't persist through that, so I was learning these lessons like that when I was asking, I would always counsel with him. I'd always go back to Bill and say, Bill, what do you think? He would always lay out the plan for me. It's like, it's like, here it is. And you got to think about all this. And you need to go to Withville, Virginia. He told me that because I was doing pretty well in Charlotte. He goes, it was a promotion to Withville, Virginia. I sat down with Bill, and Bill's like, he wanted me in Charlotte. He was in Charlotte. He said, you need to take that move. You need to sort of take the risk. And he started talking about risk management. So these little lessons were always coming through. But then what changed on January 15, 2009 was Bill passed away in 1997. But it's amazing in life when one mentor sort of passes, another comes in. And that's when Tony Robbins asked me to be the head of security.
Wow. So now you were in sales, and then were you taking some classes with Tony, or how did you become a security person from sales? I mean,
I was still in sales. I worked this entire time I was with Tony. I still had a full-time job. But, I went to a seminar in 1994 with Tony, right? Became the number one salesperson that year at the big company I was at, right? Lost all the way, did all that stuff. You got to have more, right? Give me some more. I need some more juice.
Yeah.
So I started going to seminars, but my wife, who just had a first child, wasn't keen on me spending a lot of money going to jumping up and down.
Right.
So, that wasn't one of her things that she really promoted too much. So I had to figure out a strategy, which means I could volunteer. So I could volunteer. So I was with a guy at night putting down brochures at midnight. But I was around it until one day I helped his former wife out with the situation. She asked me to be on a security team. It's a heck of a lot better than putting brochures down. So I sat in one chair for 4 days in Maui, Hawaii. I didn't move, and I watched everything. And he got confidence and more credibility in me. So a couple of years later, I was on the security team. A couple of years later, I was assistant head of security. And all of a sudden, he asked me to be head of security. I was traveling with him around the world in addition to working a full-time job. So I made some mistakes. So the mistakes I made is I gave up a lot of personal time with my family.
Yeah.
They were growing. And that was something I had to figure out later. But it was the greatest education in my life.
Yeah.
So I was getting great mentorship and learning things at different levels.
Yeah.
So when January 15th came around, when I went through a plane crash, the whole world just changes immediately. Immediately it changes.
Oh, yeah. Were you still doing both things at that time?
I was.
Okay.
And the only person, Tammy, who called me that night in the hospital was Tony Robbins. My company didn't call me, but he did. He checked in on me. And he started coaching me on what to expect and the mindset that things are going to change.
Yeah.
So that transition started I had to think at a different level.
Yeah.
I had to start thinking, and now I'm in the forefront of a lot of things. I'm in the media a lot. People are asking me for a lot of things.
Yeah.
I'm trying to work, and I'm trying to fulfill that position, right?
Yeah.
So I was having to figure out how to really manage my time effectively, which was a big challenge because I was really good.
Yeah.
But you learn you're not that good. But I was playing at a different level with different people. So 4.5 years later, when I left to start speaking full time, that was a huge transition because my wife, Tammy, I don't know about you, my wife thrives on certainty. She loves certainty. And, we've, an income, benefits, health insurance. And all of a sudden you're doing what? And by the way, what's Obamacare? Right. And so I had to give her certainty to make this transition.
Yeah.
And I had no certainty to give her, but she had to be certain in me.
Yeah.
So that transition right there was the toughest one I ever had.
So tell me again, I was following you and you're in the hospital bed.
Yep.
Tony Robbins calls you. He's concerned about, how you're doing.
Right.
And I'm assuming that from that hospital bed, you're deciding, my life is going to change from here on out. And you said something about the media.
Yep.
So I assume you were being approached by the media at that point as being someone who survived the crash. And so, everything was moving at 100 miles or more an hour at you. And yet you were learning a lot and dealing with a lot. Did you go back to your job at that point or anything? I mean, did you go back to working for Tony?
Yep.
What did you?
I did both. I went back to my job the next week because my manager asked me to go to Michigan the next week on business. And
Got back on a plane.
Got back on a plane, which was the toughest flight I ever had. But like I tell people, you got to get back on the horse, right? If you don't do it, you never do it. So, but my client actually treated me tremendously well. And that's the client. And because I was working the biggest opportunity at the company at that time. So I know why they wanted me to do that, right? It was in 2009 wasn't a very positive economic year.
Right.
So I went back to work. I was the top producer in the whole company that year.
Yeah.
I was also doing Tony stuff, but candidly, I wasn't as effective with doing head of security for Tony. So I had to really leverage my team. So I really just managed him. I didn't manage the team as much.
Uh-huh.
I had to give up something until I finally, he and I had this conversation. He said, I'm kicking you out of the nest. It's time for you to do this yourself. It's
Yeah.
time to make a decision and do this yourself. I'll find somebody else. And he's been a great, great coach, advocate, and friend.
Yeah.
Because he really pushed me out and said, this is your time to shine. This is time to do it. So he made me make that decision. Because I would have still been doing that. But,
when did that all shift or transition from? So there was a pivot point where he kind of gave you the nudge,
yep.
the loving nudge.
Right.
And you left your job. You left your formal role with Tony and you.
July of 2014. July of 2014. So it's 4.5.
So it was a few years. A few years
because I was still a top producer, making a lot of money.
And you were honoring your wife's need for stability, security.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so money, certainty, she had that. Yes, I was away doing stuff, and yes, I was speaking a little bit, and yes, I was in the media, but she had certainty at home, right? Until January 15th of that year.
Right.
Right. And all of a sudden I'm on TV again on CBS, and she saw that the impact I was having around the world, what I do. And she called me in New York and said, maybe it is time to make a transition.
Yeah. Yeah.
She gave me the permission.
Yeah.
So I had like 2 weeks to figure it out, Tammy. Yeah. Because I gave the 2-week notice. I had to figure it out.
Yeah.
But like anything else, if you make something a must, you can figure it out.
Yeah.
That's what happened. I said, I made it a must. 2 weeks later, I figured it out. But as long as I give my wife certainty, this will work out. I may not have certainty, right? But I got to give her certainty.
Everyone has different needs, right?
Right.
So I'm married to someone who needs certainty, right?
Yep.
I don't have that need.
I'm in uncertainty mode right now.
Me too. Right? That's why I'm the self-employed person. So I understand that people have different needs, and if you're going to be married to them, you have to honor those needs. Right. But there are different ways to do that, right? So you've figured that piece out. So did you know, though, when you were going to, clearly when you made that move in 2014, you must have had at least some sketch of a plan of what you were stepping into at that point. You were going to do speaking, or was it mostly focused on how does one move on from a life event such as a plane crash? And let's be clear here. We're not just talking about your everyday plane crash.
Right.
We're talking about the plane crash, right? So was it based mostly on that event, or were there other things that you wanted to be talking to people about, or were you wanting to have an impact on people in certain ways? What?
Most definitely. So initially it was about that, because that's how people associated to me.
Yeah.
But I also had a need, one of my major needs is contribution. So that's why I started doing what I did, speaking and raising money for the Red Cross. I've helped raise over $13 million for the Red Cross. I had my contribution need.
Yeah.
Right? And they helped me tremendously, because the second biggest brand in the world is the Red Cross, next to Mickey Mouse. So
next to Mickey Mouse?
Mickey Mouse is the largest, biggest brand in the world, right? So I could serve at a level, right? And I could contribute, but I was also getting my name out there to speak and do other things, so I could write a book. And then I could do coaching if I needed to, or I could bring people. I could do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So that was part of the plan, but really it came out of my need for contribution, because that's what my driving need at that point was contribution.
Yeah.
I had gratitude for surviving a plane crash. They were there, and I just brought it together that way. So, but then it started growing to a point where I did my TED Talk and went a whole different direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. TED Talk, that was a wild experience, because it took me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Totally. But I all of a sudden became an authority on a subject that no one ever talked about.
Yeah.
So it opened up a whole nother avenue.
We're going to include a link to that TED Talk in our show notes and everything, so people can see that. And of course, a link to your book. So all of these things, can you imagine the years in the restaurant business, the years in selling copiers? Would you have ever imagined that you'd be on the stage inspiring and motivating people the way you do now?
Never crossed my mind. I was with Tony all over the world. I saw how he did it.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, man, this guy really's got it going, right? He knows how to do it, but I never could see it for me.
That's what I was wondering about. If that had something to do with the direction you went in. I don't mean to boil it down in such a simplistic way, because there's nothing simple about what you've been through, but you had your 15 minutes of fame, let's say, right? But I'm wondering, what would your being around someone like Tony all these years, the kind of impact he has had, the kind of message that he has for people, and the influence that he's had on so many people's lives, just by simply being around that, might that make you want to be someone who has that kind of impact? And it sounds like you didn't see yourself in that role immediately.
Initially. I really didn't.
Interesting.
I can see him doing it. I love being around the energy, right? And I say,
Yeah.
what would it be like to be in front of 10,000 people, right? And doing all this, jumping up and down and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But the transition at that point, I'll tell you exactly the moment. I can tell you the exact moment the decision came, and then the moment it happened. This moment the decision came was in Charlotte, and I was asked by the Red Cross to speak at one of their local events. That's no big deal, right? I mean, but there was a lady there from Naples, Florida, who heard me. And she said, you need to come speak at our national conference. And I said, sure, why not, right? Washington, D.C., 400 women, right? Here's one guy with 400 women. Pretty good odds, right? I'm pretty good. That's perfect for me, right?
Yeah.
But I go to Washington, D.C., and I do this, and people were crying. And I had an agency there watching me. And all of a sudden, they're making me an offer to, once all of a sudden, they want to market me. And I'm sitting there going, that's the moment all of a sudden I said, maybe I did have impact on somebody. Maybe I can do this and impact people's lives. That's the moment that everything transitioned. I said yes. And I started speaking. Now I'm speaking, I'm working for my company, and I'm doing Tony stuff.
Wow.
So I had to figure it out. But that's the moment, Tammy, that transitioned everything. I said, I can do this. I want to do this. And I saw so many people, 400 women being impacted at one moment. I said, I have something to say.
Yeah.
And so that's, and I've spoken over 1,000 times around the world, being able to do this and impacting people's lives. So if that decision didn't come, that invitation didn't come, that's why I call my books Moments Matter. All these moments you don't think matter are there.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's true. And I love the way that you can point to those moments, the gentleman who walked into the restaurant way back when, with the flannel shirt, not knowing who he was behind the flannel shirt, and yet the influence he had, all those pivotal people, those pivotal moments when, you have to be open to those moments too.
Right.
And you have to be ready for them, but you can't really prepare for them.
Right.
And yet you were looking for something to show up for you. And then when it showed up, you were ready to step into it.
My mom always told me I had to be aware for everything. She said, you always have to have your eyes open. You never know when something's going to come your way.
Yeah.
She told me that when I was a kid, right? And, and my mother had a great influence on me. I mean, even that day on the plane, she was talking to me, but that came from being a kid, that she said, always have your eyes open. You never know when something's going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's what I named the book Moments Matters. All those moments like that, people just go through life. 99% of the moments in people's lives are boring.
Right.
1% are exciting.
Yeah.
But most people aren't even aware of them.
Yeah.
Right? They just let it go. And that's all I'm being able to do is be aware of these moments. And how can I impact somebody's life using these moments?
Right. So what does that look like today? I know you have a private group that you call Impact.
Yep.
I'd love to hear about that. And from that moment forward, in front of those 400 women, what is life looking like for you today?
Well, that's a great question, because now we're working on Dave 2.0 is what we're calling it, because, we're sort of really honing in on, how can we serve at the highest level for the most impact? That's why I named the group Impact. And candidly, that came from basically watching how Tony did his basket brigade.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a different focus, but, I saw he's impacting millions of people now, and just started with small groups, right? Just start growing and multiplying. So my impact group is really about giving exclusive content that I've learned, but more importantly, that I give access to my mentors like a Tony Robbins, to people like that I've been around, that I can bring them in, and they can, people like that can give my folks the coaching they gave me, in addition to me giving them the coaching, and all of a sudden I can multiply exponentially their knowledge level. So I'm really growing that group. That's the reason I'm growing that group is I really want to impact 1 million people in the next 10 years. And how am I going to do that? I got to get 100 people. And 100 people, I get coach them how to do 100, 100, 100. And all of a sudden, that's how Tony did it. So
you're kind of like training the trainer, so to speak, or mentoring the mentor.
That's my goal.
Coach.
That's my goal. And some people, want to be mentors. Some people just want to come to the juice. That's fine.
Right.
But I'm also learning the Dave 2.0 is there's some people who really want me to be their Bill.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And what happened last summer made the transition in my mind how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
What happened last summer, Tammy, is Bill passed away in 1997.
Yeah.
And the last time I physically saw Bill was in his office. It was about a month and a half, maybe 2 months after my mom passed away.
Ah.
And I was sort of in and out, right? I mean, I was the eldest son. I had to handle the business, right? So I was in business mode, but then all of a sudden you get back and now you got to deal with it.
Mm.
So Bill called me into his office here in Charlotte. He was probably 80-some years old then. He just sat me down and said, we started talking. And he said that, I want to share something with you. So he walks over to his desk. And all of a sudden he opens up his desk. He brings this big bunch of all this paper. And said, I want to give this to you. And what it was the handwritten notes from 1929 that his mentor gave to him on these 12 principles. He said, I want to give this to you, but you cannot let it die with you. And so I said, of course, hey, I'm honored, right? Now I'm still pretty young, right? I don't know what I have in my hands just yet.
Yeah.
But then, Bill also told me he had lung cancer because I know he's a chain smoker. And he looked a little rough. He told me he had lung cancer. So he passed away 4 months later.
Wow.
So what do? The brilliant guy that I am in 1997, I take these notes and put them in a journal and leave them there until last summer when I open it up and I'm finding these. Also, I'm going, so I feel like an idiot. But then
you just found them last summer?
Last July, when I was in my office or over here, right next to where I'm at. They were in this journal all those years. So I'm thinking, what an idiot I am. But then on the other side, I'm like, God gives you things when you're ready. He's ready to give you things.
Yeah.
And I said, I wasn't ready mentally or emotionally or spiritually or physically. So he gave me these. So now I have these notes. So I've been immersing myself. So now I have to fulfill this commitment. I'm looking for 10 people that I can now share intimate details like Bill did for me and take these 10 people through this ride that Bill gave me.
Wow.
So those people can then do whatever, right, and take it. So that's now part of my mission. And it's amazing to see in 1929 what he wrote, his mentor wrote to him and gave him. It's not mind-shattering stuff, but what he did is took these 12 things and break it down, through your relationships and your business and your physical. He did and all these lessons. It's like it's gold.
Yeah,
you can't do this again. So I'm glad. Thank you for letting me share that because that's part of my mission now. Dave 2.0 is to take now this to 10 people one-on-one and do what Bill did for me to them.
Wow. So Dave, the folks listening to this podcast are probably contemplating what's next for themselves, perhaps are thinking about how they themselves can get maybe unstuck or maybe they're just trying to figure out what's next. What would be some key pieces of advice that you would give people who are thinking about where to go next?
That's a great question. I'll answer it probably a couple different levels. And one of the things I started reading and listening to is most successful people put together 10-year plans. So, I put a 10-year plan together in 2009, which is coming to the end here at the end of May of 2009. So we're going to the next 10-year plan. So number one, I think people need to put together a plan, number one. And what's most important to you and what has to happen for you to get it? And that's the two questions I always start with when I talk to people. What's most important to you and what has to happen for you to get that? Mm-hmm. See, all of a sudden people know what's most important to me, I won't be successful. Great. What do you have to do to be able to do that? Well, then no one knows how to do that. Right? What has to happen for you to realize that is the most important question. So obviously that's another level two is asking those questions of yourself is now you're stuck. What do you want to do? What's most important? What has to happen? You have to understand your mission. Yeah. You have to understand your purpose in life. Yeah. Right? And if you don't know that yet, that's the first question you need to ask. What's most important? What is my purpose in this life? And you have to really dig deep. That will then lead you on that pathway.
Yeah. I call it what's your why?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love it. That's great. Well, Dave, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and sharing your story and your journey. And I have a feeling there's so much more to come.
Well, I hope so. I believe that I'm here for a reason and a purpose, right? And
Yeah.
I think we all are here for a reason and a purpose. And and I'll leave you with this. And I shared this the other day in a talk I gave over in Nashville, Tennessee, is I had the honor and privilege of escorting a gentleman named General Norman Schwarzkopf. And it was an amazing day in my life.
Yeah.
I was young, and you're pretty cocky, but you're on a 4-star general. But he said something to me that day. And I'm sure he said it to many thousands of other people, but he said, when he's given the opportunity to lead. So, when you're given that opportunity, you got to take advantage of it, right? You just don't step back and say, I can't do it. Just step up and do it.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to tell people. When you're confused, all that means is you're going to have a breakthrough.
Yeah.
All that means you're going to have a breakthrough.
I love it.
So, I would say if I can help anybody, I would love to interact with them. And LinkedIn's the best way to do that because I give new content out every day. I have a goal of giving 300 pieces of new content this year. And that's the best way to be able to contact me and interact.
The best way is to find Dave Sanderson on LinkedIn.
David Sanderson, under David Sanderson, because someone already got Dave Sanderson.
Oh, so it's David.
Yes, my mother's extremely proud in heaven, I'm sure. I'm using David for a change.
Okay. So the best way to find you is through LinkedIn, David Sanderson.
Yep. Or my website at Dave Sanderson Speaks.
Okay.
That's where I tell people to go to have information about my group impact. If you really want to get immersed, let's go there.
All right. Great. Well, we will have all of that information, all the appropriate links in the show notes, so people will be able to find you and the resources that we've discussed. And I want to thank you again for your time today. This has really been a great conversation, and I know I feel energized by it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tammy.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Dave Sanderson. It was interesting to speak with him and learn about his personal journey and professional transitions. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? Is there something you'll put into action that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. Look for episode 037. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. Are you thinking about what's next for you? Ready to consider your options or begin a process of exploration to get the clarity, energy, and plans you need to move forward? I am piloting a small group for 4 to 6 professional women who are curious, willing, and ready to engage in a 3-month program that offers the information, inspiration, and support you need to get where you are going next. Cohorts are beginning in mid-September 2019. By the completion of the group, you will be refreshed and ready to take on new endeavors. Are you interested? Do you have questions? Please contact me through my website or via email, and we will schedule a conversation to explore the possibilities. I still have some space available for the September groups. If you enjoyed this episode with Dave, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find my page at tammygulerloeb.com/Apple. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work or other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows? Maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.